testimony and your service. I want to drill down a little bit more on what your comments indicating that the reorganization under the Office of Access to Capital is going to, you say, make the services more friendly to those who are relying upon disaster relief help. I would like you to explain how you see the improved services to the people in need and what lessons we learned from the pandemic that we can use to improve the services during a disaster, whether it be a natural disaster or whether it be a pandemic.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. It's right person, right job. And it is in part implementing some of the lessons that we learned from COVID, technology, building capacity, surge, putting those protocols in place to be able to detect and deter fraud and respond to that. The Office of Capital Access is the home to the lending of programs of SBA, so the expertise is already there. We will see efficiencies, improved technologies for improved customer service. What that allows the Office of Disaster Assistance to do is to focus on the very critical piece of connecting disaster survivors with that streamlined and improved disaster lending process.
Because, you know, particularly during the pandemic, there was concerns on how the programs were being administered. I understand the Office of Capital Access has direct lending services to your customers. So I do think you need to assure that the service levels meet the needs. During a disaster, it's critically important to be on the ground immediately, have your personnel on the ground immediately at the site. The businesses cannot seek you out. They're trying to board up their properties and figuring out what they have to do in order to stay afloat. You need to be where they are. Is that the intent, that you will be able to provide that type of on-ground services during a natural disaster? Actually, before it even starts, you need to be on the ground.
Senator, that is exactly the intent, to meet the customer where they are. As part of that improvement is we can be on the ground quicker. We can meet with those, as you mentioned, those local resource partners, the the SCORE and those programs, to ensure that we are tailoring our response in a way that is reflective of that community's needs. And we can stay longer, focused on that mission of meeting them on the ground to ensure that long-term recovery, that we are part of that and in sync with those local priorities.
So how do you coordinate the work that you do with your resource partners, with the SBDCs and the women's business centers, or with the other community organizations such as the CDFIs, or quite frankly with the other federal agencies that are involved during a natural disaster such as FEMA, HUD? How do you coordinate the different players that are there to help someone a business or a homeowner that's during a disaster?
Sure. By its very definition, a disaster means that local resources are overwhelmed. Not even a federal agency could tackle that altogether. So that's why those relationships are critically important. In every opportunity that I've had to be on the ground, I have visited with our local partners, our business development centers, our women entrepreneur centers, local chambers of commerce, to see how we can leverage those relationships. We work across the board with FEMA, HUD, and other agencies to make sure we're lockstep moving forward and being nimble and scalable to tailor our response from the ground up to meet those needs.
Well, I want to follow up, not necessarily right now, as to how we make sure that we have that type of coordination and how this reorganization with the SBA will assist. You're the lead in some areas, some you're not, but you all have to be working in a coordinated way during these stressful times. I want to get to one other subject, and that is the pre-disaster planning, to have plans in place, to use resources to help particularly small businesses develop a pre-disaster strategy and plan. We've allowed the use of resources for this purpose. Tell me how you intend to carry out that role of your responsibilities.
Yes, Senator, that is exactly the part of the new mission, is to making sure that we lean in ahead of the disaster as we have folks on the ground working with our field office, working with our local resource partners, that we take those plans at the high level, but then tailor them to meet the unique needs of that community, not just now, well in advance of a disaster, but as we are landing on the ground, making sure we tweak those to be responsive in the moment, and we're going to move forward as we do that, make that part of the planning process, make that the institutional way to respond, and build out that culture.
Thank you. Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman. Administrator Sanchez, welcome.